स्थापकाय च धर्मस्य सर्वधर्मस्वरूपिणे अवतारवरिष्ठाय रामकृष्णाय ते नमः. Today we are going to discuss something about Sri Ramakrishna. I really wonder how we discuss this great mind. We can't even call it mind. It's the nomenon itself. It's not just a great spiritual phenomenon. It is the nomenon itself, Brahman himself in a human form. So a mind immersed in God consciousness, constantly plunging into that state and coming out just to give the wisdom of that state to us. A mind totally immersed in God all the time, sensitive only to God, so that the least suggestions of God consciousness would put him into that state. This is the mind of Sri Ramakrishna. Sometimes I really wonder, how do we understand Sri Ramakrishna without touching something of that ourselves? Without the touch of samadhi, it is not possible to understand this type of mind. So Sri Ramakrishna, understanding the mind which was constantly moving in and out of the highest state of consciousness and coming into this world only to give us the wisdom of God, the nature of existence. This is something, it's a supremely purifying experience, even to think of him, even to discuss something about him, to read the gospel of Sri Ramakrishna, to read his life. That itself is a sadhana. I knew somebody who would tell me that just reading the gospel of Sri Ramakrishna changed his entire mind. I would say just reading a bit of the gospel of Sri Ramakrishna holds this power. So here we have a mind which was so sensitive to God that the least suggestions of God consciousness would put him into the state of samadhi many times a day. See, something as simple as one day Sri Ramakrishna saw a boy standing in the pose of Krishna, the characteristic pose, leg pose of Krishna, and seeing that, Sri Ramakrishna went into samadhi because it reminded him of Krishna. If he saw any of the ingredients of worship, it would remind him of the Divine Mother, the vessels used in her worship. It would throw him into a state of intoxication. Just looking at the Charanamrit, he would be put into a state of samadhi. He would say, I get intoxicated even when I just look at it. He didn't even have to drink it. He would be reeling in ecstasy. So this is the type of mind that we are trying to study. And this mind immersed in God all the time. That is the only definition of Sri Ramakrishna which we can give. God himself coming to show us what his nature is like, what his bhav is like, and what his wisdom is, what is his knowledge like. So the study of Sri Ramakrishna's life, see, his perception of this world was one of unitary consciousness. He was established in that state. It comes out in so many ways in his words. And that state was so natural to him that he saw only God. Everything else as a superimposition of name and form on that reality of Brahman. Established in Brahman consciousness, as it were. And yet, he takes the mood of duality just to bring in bhakti towards Sagun Brahman. He shows us the value, the nature of devotion also. So he has energized, empowered every path towards the supreme goal of Brahman, God consciousness. He has empowered every path through his own life, through his own experiences. The unitary consciousness in which he was established, he could generate into another mind through a mere touch. In Kashmir Shaivism, it's called Shaktipat, the direct transmission of grace in the form of the realization. This he could do it to a qualified aspirant just by a mere look or touch. If you read Sri Ramakrishna's life, when he would be in Bhav Samadhi or ecstatic with joy and dancing in joy, all the people around him would be so taken up by that bhav, so carried away by that feeling, they would become ecstatic themselves. They would be dancing in joy. A full, you can say, a group of people mad with love of God would be generated. When Narendranath would come to Sri Ramakrishna, Narendranath was the future Swami Vivekananda. So when he started coming to Sri Ramakrishna, he saw these states of mind. See, whatever word we use, it is less, it can't express the nature or the bhav of Sri Ramakrishna. That is why I shudder to speak about Sri Ramakrishna. In all humility, a jiva cannot express the Supreme Lord. But something we have to understand of him. Somehow we have to make our mind dwell on him. So we use all these expressions. When Narendranath first came to Sri Ramakrishna, he saw where Sri Ramakrishna's mind dwelt. It was in such a transcendental realm that each of his moods, each of his bhavs would inflame the aspiring soul towards God. And you could see it in his eyes. Once Narendranath, as a young college student, was sitting near Sri Ramakrishna. And for those of you who have visited Dakshineshwar and seen that beautiful room on the banks of the Ganga, so a cool breeze was blowing. Narendranath is sitting there listening to the immortal words of the Master. Sri Ramakrishna, in the course of his conversation, talked about Advait Vedant, the non-dual Brahman, and the nature of that experience. He would talk only from experience. He was not expounding through some shastra, through some scripture. He was talking of his own experience. And he said that everything is only Brahman. It is God alone, Brahman alone that has become all this. There is just an appearance of name and form. And hence, for a devotee who has understood this nature of the Lord, for him everything is the Lord. Narendranath heard this, and then he came out of the room. And he was pondering over these words of the Master when he suddenly saw Hazra. Hazra was another a kind of devotee who lived in Dakshineshwar. He was also a kind of critic. He was a strange man. And when he looked at Narendranath, Narendranath said, "Do you know, I heard about the truth of non-dualism, Advait, today, Advait Vedant. And this doctrine is so strange. It says everything is God. You are God, I am God, Ghati Ishwar, Bati Ishwar." And they both started laughing, which means the cup is God, the jar is God, the water pot is God, everything is God. So how ridiculous is this idea? They said, and they started laughing. Sri Ramakrishna stepped out of his room and he said, "What are you all talking?" And he came close to Narendranath and touched him, not Hazra. Touched Narendranath's chest. And that one touch put Narendranath's mind into such a state of perception that he saw the all-pervading reality alone. He saw indeed everything is pure consciousness. What used to appear as an object is just a hazy something, a name and form, somehow superimposed on this reality of Brahman. He literally saw this. Not that all is God. God alone is. All is not. Name and form are insubstantial. Name and form do not actually exist. This was his experience. And this experience persisted for a long, long time. Even when he went home, on his way, a carriage is coming towards him. He did not understand where he ends and the carriage begins. Look at the experience. His sense of perception had totally changed. His limbs had become numb. He says, "I did not feel any energy in my limbs." A different consciousness had altogether awakened in him. When he came home, his mother had laid out food for him. He saw that the plate, the food, his mother also All of them were nothing but Brahman, pure consciousness. Everything else that was them is only hazy. Pure consciousness shining everywhere. He himself is that. There is no Narendranath. He goes to Cornwallis Square. There he sees the railing. He bangs his head on the railing to check if it is real. He sees it only as Brahman. So this state persisted for such a long time that he became convinced. Deep within him, he understood this is what Vedanta means when it says Brahman is the only reality. Brahma Satyam Jagad Mithya. So a complementary sense of the unreality of objects as they impinge upon the senses and the mind, the unreality of name and form as it impinges upon the senses of the mind naturally arose in him. As this experience gradually faded over time and became only a memory, he understood that these two are complementary experiences. When you understand the reality of God, Brahman, one consciousness alone, in a complementary sense, you understand that then what appeared as the world is obviously unreal. But Jivo Brahmaiva Naparaha. But this Jiva is nothing but this Brahman, actually. And that is why Jivahood is unreal. So it came to him as an experience. It changed his perception entirely by the magical touch of Sri Ramakrishna. It was not a thought out thing. It was not an intellectual construct. It was not an insight. It was an experience. He just dived into it and he remained with it. And at the end of it, he understood the grand truth of Advait Vedant. And within 10 years' time, he would be speaking of this truth from platforms around the world, in Europe and America and India. And he became the greatest exponent of Advait Vedant and yoga to the world because it was an experience with him. So this touch of Sri Ramakrishna could transform minds, could open different levels of perception. Just the touch. Look at the remarkable power of this personality. We can't even call him a personality. So Sri Ramakrishna, once Vivekananda said this later on, this was the remarkable power of this man, that he, as one molds articles out of clay, he would mold the human mind into whatever he wished it to be. He could change sanskars just like that, and he could grant the highest experiences just by a touch, by a look. This was the mind of Sri Ramakrishna. He dwelt in that realm of unitary consciousness, and with struggle, he came out of there, from that realm, just to give us the wisdom of that state. Our scriptures speak of this in so many ways. That is why Narendranath, as Vivekananda later on, he pointed out, without studying Sri Ramakrishna, one can never understand the real import of the Vedas, the Vedanta, Bhagavata, and other scriptures. His life is a searchlight of infinite power thrown upon the entire mass of Indian religious thought. He was a living commentary to the Vedas and to their aim. This was Sri Ramakrishna. Our scriptures speak of it in various ways, the Upanishads especially. Sarvam khalu idam brahma. Everything is verily Brahman. Neha nanasti kinchana. There is no nana, there is no diversity, multiplicity. And then in the Chandogya Upanishad, you have Tattvamasi Shvetaketu. You are verily that Brahman. So all this comes alive when you read the life of Sri Ramakrishna. Once M, the author of the Gospel of Sri Ramakrishna, enters Sri Ramakrishna's room. The master is in Samadhi. He is sitting on that small cot, and M goes and sits near Sri Ramakrishna. He is literally exuding divine consciousness, a radiance which fills the room as it were. The mind in the higher state will usher every mind into that state. So he is in the state of super consciousness. And from that, for a long time, Sri Ramakrishna was in that state, exuding joy and bliss. And then slowly he came down from that state. And then he says, Do you know what I see? I see that this whole world is nothing but Him. He has become all this. These men, women, these buildings, these trees, this temple garden, it is all He. I see it is verily He. Then He gives a beautiful illustration, an example Sri Ramakrishna gives here. He says, it's like a wax garden. In a wax garden, everything is made up of wax. The trees are made up of wax. The leaves are wax. The fruit is wax. Everything is wax. Because it is a wax garden. So also in this world, what is appearing as a world is the interpretation of the mind. In reality, it is only pure divine consciousness. That is the wax. Brahman is all that there is. And everything is nothing but Brahman with a name and form. So he is literally seeing what the Upanishads are talking about. And this experience of Sri Ramakrishna, it so stunned him. You will find it in the Gospel of Sri Ramakrishna that Sri Ramakrishna's unified vision was based on this. The mind perpetually dwelt in that state. And that is why literally he saw God everywhere. One who is immersed in God literally sees that. And he had to give this knowledge to Narendranath, because once when he had asked Narendranath what he wants, Narendranath had said, I want to remain immersed in Samadhi. And Sri Ramakrishna said, why? That's a small aim. I thought you are a big banyan tree which will give shelter to thousands in the future. But you have such a small aim. There's a state higher than that, than Samadhi, than remaining absorbed in the object of meditation. And that state is seeing everything as God. There's no everything even there. Seeing God. And seeing that it is God alone who appears as this everything. Then Sri Ramakrishna had said this, that you yourself sing this song, Tujhe se humne dil ko lagaya, jo kuch hai so tu hi hai. This is a beautiful song which Narendranath used to sing, that, oh Lord, I put my mind in you and now I see that jo kuch hai so tu hi hai, whatever is there is only you. So this beautiful song is based on an experience like this. So all of these experiences, as I said, have come alive in Sri Ramakrishna's great life. Even to understand this life, just reading the life of Sri Ramakrishna makes one very serious, very sensitive. Deep calmness descends in the heart, just watching his experiences. Once he goes to Bulgaria, to Murthy Seal's garden house. There's a tank and a number of fish are squirming, splashing water in it. And he looks at that and says, look, Act Chaitanya. See, one consciousness squirming as it were, splashing in so many bodies. He's seeing the same thing everywhere. When he stands in a meadow, he is in Samadhi. He used to say, when I stand in an open place, it reminds me of the Infinite One. It plunges me into God consciousness. When somebody tore a piece of cloth in front of him, he goes into Samadhi because it is a division. It reminds him that everything is actually unified by consciousness. Somebody once closed an umbrella in front of Sri Ramakrishna and he went to Samadhi because it reminded him of the sudden gathering in of the powers of the human mind towards God, and it put him into Samadhi. So this is the type of mind, the mind of Sri Ramakrishna. Through the might of his realizations, Sri Ramakrishna comes to us as the harmonizer of all paths. This was his great message. Every path is a way to God. Joto mat toto path, he used to say. Every religion is a way to God. So every religion is true. He tried it out in his own life. Nobody became a Hindu, a Christian and a Muslim by turns. But Sri Ramakrishna did. In his own life, he experienced the truth, the validity of each of these paths to the supreme goal of God. He describes each of the yogas, the different yogas, the different means to God, all of them are valid paths to God. So he's a harmonizer of all of these. He showed us that the steps of Vedant, Dvaita, Vishishta Dvaita, and Advaita Vedant, they are 3 steps on the ladder taking you to God. All these philosophies, you see, were at loggerheads with each other for a long time through the centuries. Sri Ramakrishna shows us through his own life that they are each a rung of a ladder taking us to the truth of God. So Sri Ramakrishna is the supreme, you can say, harmonizer of all these differences. He united the sacred and the secular through his mighty experience of Advaita. The many and the one not just belong to the same reality, they are one reality expressing in 2 different forms. So Sri Ramakrishna is the supreme harmonizer. His message is a message of harmony amongst religions, inter-religion, religious harmony, intra-religious harmony, harmony of every path of religion, and harmony among all the varied divisions which we find in religion. That is why you can say the avatar comes to teach, the incarnation comes to teach the ultimate values of life. And this is what we find so beautifully expressed in the life of Sri Ramakrishna. The scriptures use this expression to show us the nature of Brahman. Yato vacho nivartante aprapya manasasaha, which means that state from where the mind and the senses and the speech, they return baffled, unable to reach. It is that state, the state of pure consciousness. Now this expression is so beautifully fulfilled in Sri Ramakrishna's life. He used to say, Brahma Gnan is the only thing that has not become defiled through speech. It can't be touched by speech. It is inexpressible because it is of the nature of pure consciousness. How will you explain consciousness? Can you explain the nature of the taste of ghee? There are some things which you can't express. The deepest things in life are like that. So once this came true in Sri Ramakrishna's life in this manner, Sri Ramakrishna once resolved that he would tell the devotees what he felt in the Samadhi state, how he felt in that state. So the devotees were sitting around him and he started giving a running account of what happens as the Kundalini Shakti rises through the Sushumna. And at each stage, at each chakra, what are the mental sensations, the unfolding of awareness at the higher centers, all this he started explaining to them. So he could explain well until the Anahata chakra and the Vishuddha chakra. So there he was explaining how the awareness of the aspirant completely changes. At the Anahata, he actually sees light. At the Vishuddha chakra, he becomes immersed in God consciousness. He can talk of nothing but God. But because it is actually happening in his system, he could no more talk about the Agnya chakra because there one plunges into God consciousness completely. So he plunged into God consciousness. He went into a state of samadhi. Immediately, his speech broke off in mid-sentence, as it were, and he plunged into the state. I think this was the best commentary to the awakening of the Kundalini and the rise of higher consciousness, the unfoldment of the highest consciousness. Sri Ramakrishna actually plunged into that state. After some time, he came out of it and still he wanted to give that knowledge, but he couldn't. Again, he plunged into that state. And then the devotees understood, indeed, Brahman cannot be explained, cannot be expressed in no way, through no instrumentation, through no process can it be explained. It cannot be known through the senses, it cannot be known through the mind. Indeed, it is true. Yato vacho nivartante aprapya manasasaha. See how he is proving the truths of the Upanishads, the truths of Vedanta through his own life. That is why he could draw out parables like that salt doll parable which he gives. He says, a salt doll went to measure the ocean, but it being made up of salt, it just melted away into the ocean. Who would come back to tell the ocean's depths? So the real nature of the jiva is like that. It is of the nature of pure consciousness. So if it goes to measure the ocean of Brahman, how will it be able to tell what is the ocean like? It is itself a salt doll. So these beautiful, apt parables which Sri Ramakrishna gives came from his own life, from his own experiences. That is why they are so powerful. They affect us so deeply. Again, let me continue the nature of this mind. See, even in the midst of a conversation, Sri Ramakrishna would appear to become abstract. He would enter the realm of Sagun Brahman and start talking with the Divine Mother. When a newcomer would come to him, many times Sri Ramakrishna would explain his experiences. Maybe he is talking about his states of samadhi, his experience in any particular state. Immediately he would enter into the state of bhav samadhi, and start talking with the mother. Mother, have you come? Mother, sit here. Don't plunge me into the higher state, because I want to talk with the devotees. And this appeared sometimes like something abstract to the newcomer, but he was actually conversing with God in that state. And how does M describe this? M describes this very beautifully. He says it was like the case of a fisherman, an angler actually, who's sitting on a river bank, and he feels a tug on the line. So a fish has caught the line. How will the fisherman become? He becomes alert at once. He grips the rod and he becomes silent. Sri Ramakrishna would become like this in his moods of this deep transport of spiritual feeling, bhav samadhi. He would become like this, and then he would plunge into the mother, the consciousness of the divine, and he would converse with her. After some time, he is back again to the normal state of consciousness and giving the devotee the wisdom of that state, the knowledge of that state. So you see, this was Sri Ramakrishna, and his life shows us clearly how to approach God. Intimacy with the Divine Mother. Sri Ramakrishna shows us it is not earned by merit. It comes with birth as a sacred trust. It is our birthright because we are born of her, and we only have to lay a claim to this as children lay a claim to their parents. They ask from their parents whatever they want because the love is absolute. So also, intimacy with God is not due to this or earned by this or that. We belong to him, and we must exercise this upon him. It's a sacred trust. So Sri Ramakrishna actually demonstrated the highest love of God, how God is to be loved, how God is to be approached, and how God reveals himself to one who approaches him thus. It's a complete relationship of love, and love is God. So this you find so beautifully coming out of Sri Ramakrishna's life. Then, in the radiance of these realizations of Sri Ramakrishna, a number of profound doctrinal questions, you can even say philosophical questions, were answered in a remarkable fashion, in a very remarkable way. This you will find it only in the Gospel of Sri Ramakrishna. You see, once somebody asks Sri Ramakrishna, is God with form or without form? This is a common question. Now, Sri Ramakrishna's answer is, look, he is with form, without form, and again beyond both. And he is many other things besides. Now, what do we make out of this? Then he himself explains. He says, you see, it is just like water. Water, when a cooling influence falls on that water, it condenses into ice. So also by the cooling influence of the bhakta's bhakti, devotion, the Lord takes any form, the form of the devotee. The Gita actually confirms this by saying, Ye yathamam prapadyante tams tathaiva bhajamyaham. As my devotee wishes, I take that form, Krishna says. And then Sri Ramakrishna says, Like this, God takes any form according to the desire of the devotee, but then when the sun of knowledge rises, the ice melts away back into water. So when Jnana comes, the form merges into the formless again. That is why God is with form, without form, and again beyond both. See, what a beautiful illustration. A mind which has tasted all of this only can give such an illustration, isn't it? He lived in the bliss of God consciousness. Then he talks about the devotee also. He says the question is put to him is, where does God dwell? He says, some devotees, the ordinary class, will say God dwells somewhere in heaven. The mediocre class will say God dwells in our hearts. But the superior class of devotees will say, God, He alone He has become all this. He is the Jiva. He is this world of manifestation. He is the 24 cosmic principles. Actually, God alone is. The rest is a superimposition upon that reality. Because they see this. So look at his answers. They come from the profoundest experience of God consciousness. Then, Sri Ramakrishna, what was his take on scholarship and scriptural study? Sri Ramakrishna himself had heard a lot from the scriptures, but his entire exposition or interpretation, or you can say it's not to be called interpretation, you can say his words were based on his experience. It was very clear to anybody who approached him. And he would not give too much importance to just scholarship. In fact, he undermined simply collecting facts and information from here and there. Without sadhana, one can never understand the spirit of the scriptures. He was very straight about this. And how did he show this in his own life? See, let me give you a very interesting incident here. Once a celebrated Pandit from Bengal visited Sri Ramakrishna in his room at Dakshineshwar. So when they heard that this Pandit was coming, Sri Ramakrishna became nervous like a child and told the people around him, see, he's a very big man and he's coming to meet me. You all please be around. We don't know what he will say. And for a fool like me, what will I say to him? So you all please be around. So humble Sri Ramakrishna was. Now the Pandit came and he bowed down to Sri Ramakrishna and sat in front of him. And then he looked at the master keenly. Sri Ramakrishna also saw him as one sees through a glass case. And then Sri Ramakrishna later on said, I felt a creeping sensation in my spine. I felt my energy rising upward and I plunged into the state of God consciousness. In that state, I myself did not know what I was saying. I lost all self-consciousness and spoke some words. And when I opened my eyes, I saw that the Pandit was wrapped in tears. He was weeping, sobbing away. And all the people who had gathered there were stunned at the profundity and the wisdom of the Master's words, because they were words born of the awakened mind. He touched God consciousness and spoke, and this created the impact. Many Pandits visited Sri Ramakrishna and they were transformed. Looking at the states of his mind, they understood the purpose of the scriptures. They understood where the essential change is to be made in themselves. There was Narayan Shastri, a great Pandit who had become an expert of the Shad Darshan, the 6 systems of Indian philosophy. For a long time he had studied them. And when he heard of Sri Ramakrishna, he came to see him. And just seeing Sri Ramakrishna, his moods, his states of mind, Narayan Pandit forgot everything and went away to perform intense austerities in Vashishta Gufa in Assam. He became a spiritual aspirant of the highest order. When this Padmalochan came to, he was also a Vedanta Pandit. came to the master, hearing Sri Ramakrishna's songs, he would just weep. The great Vedantin. When Vaishnav Charan asked Gauri Pandit was very famous in Bengal, and these were all men of great learning. So Vaishnav Charan also was a Pandit. One day he asked Gauri Pandit, this was long back when Sri Ramakrishna was still young. So he asks Gauri Pandit, how do you look upon Sri Ramakrishna? Do you look upon him as an incarnation of God? And Gauri Pandit said, that's an understatement. I look upon him as that being by a fraction of whose power incarnations are born and they fulfill their mission on earth. That is Sri Ramakrishna. That is the mind of Sri Ramakrishna. So everything has fallen into place in this spectacular mind. Even to understand it, we need intense sadhana. Let me go into this particular incident where Sri Ramakrishna is telling us the importance of sadhana. It is not possible to understand this nature, the actual nature of Sri Ramakrishna without sadhana. So once when Vijay Krishna Goswami, who was himself a great saint and a man of great learning also, he visited Sri Ramakrishna. Sri Ramakrishna tells him, he first gives him this parable. He says, Vijay, do you know, once two holy men were moving around and with their bag and luggage, and they came across a city. They were traveling and they came across a city, and they decided to stop in the city for some time. One of them was looking around the city, and he found, with his bag and baggage, he was seeing the bazaar and the monuments. He found the other sadhu completely free, fresh, and without his belongings. He was moving about carefree, as it were, happily. So he asked him, my friend, where are your belongings? And then this sadhu said, you know what I did? I first found a room and I put everything into that room. I refreshed myself and then I locked the room, and here I am with the key in my pocket. I'm going around the city enjoying all its sights, these monuments, these bazaars. I'm carefree and I'm happy because I have found my room. Then Sri Ramakrishna asks Vijay, have you found your room? That is the most essential thing. Sadhana is the most essential thing. This is where you find that room, that space, the heart center, where dwells your consciousness, where you will find Brahman. Once you have found that, then you are free to roam this world. You are free to see all the sights it has to offer. But rooted in this, you can move about carefree. You can move about happy, delighted, without worry. Without this, you will be eternally worried because your mind has not found its anchor. Your mind has not found its source. It will function anyway, compulsively. But once it touches its source, once it knows its source, it is anchored. With that mind, you can do anything. That's why Sri Ramakrishna used to say, tie the knot of Advaita in the corner of your cloth and then do what you want. Tie this realization up in the corner of your cloth. Tie it there and then do whatever you like. So sadhana is absolutely important. And Sri Ramakrishna's insistence on this, you will find again and again in the Gospel of Sri Ramakrishna. He gives the story of the tiger and the goats to show us the nature of this sadhana and Vedant. To show us that our real nature itself is divine, but covered up for the present. That is why we think of ourselves as the jiva, the body-mind complex. So then you have to perform something to go to your ultimate real nature. So this he gives in the form of this beautiful parable. This is a story of a tiger which grew up in the midst of goats. So the story goes like this. It once happened that a tiger was attacking a flock of sheep, and the tiger was pregnant. So when she attacked the sheep or goats. She delivered the cub, tiger cub, but she immediately died. Now, this tiger cub, it grew up in the midst of these goats, and it thought that it was itself a goat, and it started doing all the things that the goats would do. They would bleat, they would eat grass, and they would move about hither and thither. And every day they would go out into the pasture and do these things. So it just followed the goats and came to consider itself to be one of them. And the goats also accepted it as one of their flock. And this is how the tiger cub grew up, thinking it was a goat. See, it was thinking it was a goat, that's all. Now it so happened that one day another tiger from the forest came there and he saw this tiger cub acting like a goat, and he thought, what a insult, what a disgrace to my race, to my clan of tigers. And this fellow, he's acting like a goat, so I'll teach him a lesson. So one day he slowly went close to this tiger and grabbed him and dragged him into the forest. This tiger cub was whining and pleading, and the way goats cry, it was doing all that, a plaintive cry. And then he asked the tiger that, what are you doing? And the tiger dragged him to a lake and said, look at your face, it resembles mine. You are a tiger, you are not a goat. And then this tiger said, no, I'm a goat. I live with goats, I grew up with them, and I bleed, and I eat grass. And the tiger said, gee, shame on you, you do all this. You are actually a tiger, you are acting like a goat because you think you are a goat. So you see, this tiger cub, gradually he peered into the water and he saw that his face resembled the tiger's. Then this tiger went somewhere and brought a piece of meat and put it into the tiger cub's mouth. And the tiger cub was no longer a cub, actually. He was a young tiger. He put it into his mouth and said that, just taste this. What does it feel like? And he says, it feels good. And then as his blood warmed up, he growled like a tiger because he understood that he was actually a tiger and didn't know it. Then Sri Ramakrishna says, you see, eating grass and bleating and moving about like those goats, it is chasing this world of mundane pleasures, just chasing woman and gold. And then running away when the tiger of the forest comes to grab him, running away and crying, that is like behaving like an ordinary jiva who doesn't know his real nature. And the tigers coming from the forest, that is the guru's coming. Going away with the tiger is going with the guru. And showing the face in the lake is getting introduced to your own true being, getting introduced to your real nature. Then Sri Ramakrishna says, you are that pure being, existence, consciousness, bliss. You are the tiger itself. Just thinking you are a goat, you have assumed a individuality based on this body and mind. You have identified with a body and mind. And so you think you are only this much. But actually you are the tiger. You are the pure self of the nature of Satchidananda, of the nature of God. So this beautiful parable shows us how we are deluded, how we assume things without investigation. And the actual message of the Vedanta has come out through parables like this. If you read the Gospel of Sri Ramakrishna, you will find a lot of parables like this. Beautiful parables that point out to our real nature, to the real fact about our so-called personalities and about the truth of our being. The human being is only an appearance. The personality is indeed a persona. It is a mask we wear because primarily we are conscious beings. And the heart of this conscious experience is pure consciousness. That is the Atman, the unchanging datum of our experience, the undeniable denominator of all our experiences. That is what we actually are. functioning through this body mind complex. But being so identified with the body and mind, we think we are only body and mind. We are only this personality. We think we are a goat. That's the whole problem. Until the tiger, the guru, comes and rescues us. So it's a beautiful parable to show us our real nature. Look at Sri Ramakrishna's example of reality. How do we understand reality? How do we weigh this world? He gives a very beautiful illustration through the example of a bale fruit. For those of you who have seen a bale fruit, it is a fruit which has a outer crust. You can call it the exocarp. Then there's the flesh, and then there are seeds. So when we consume a bale fruit, we actually remove the crust and remove the seeds and consume just the flesh. But if you want to take the weight of the bale fruit, what would we do? We would weigh the whole fruit, isn't it? Then Sri Ramakrishna says, see, the bale fruit is this world of manifestation. And the flesh, the content is actually, the crust is this world of manifestation, and the content is God, Brahman. Now, the weight of the, if you want the weight of the bale fruit, you want net reality, totality of Brahman, you must include all of this, the entire weight of the fruit, which includes the crust, outer crust, the flesh, and the seeds. This includes all of manifestation and pure consciousness, Brahman. It includes all of this. But if you want the essence of the fruit, it is only the flesh that matters. Isn't it? Brahman alone matters. That is the essence of life. But if you want the weight of the fruit, then you have to take everything into consideration. All aspects of reality, which Shankaracharya called the Paramarthika Satya, the Pratibhasika Satya, and the Vyavaharika Satya. All of them are included in the weight of the fruit. But the essence of the fruit is only Brahman, only God. So what a beautiful example to show us how we understand all these systems of Vedanta. How do we understand the nature of reality and what essentially matters? What's the point in taking the weight of the fruit if you don't taste the fruit? So getting the knowledge of Brahman, getting the knowledge of the ultimate is the thing in life. It is the purpose of human life. Sri Ramakrishna would always say this, the realization of God is the only purpose of human life. There is no other purpose. There is no other mission to our lives but knowing the real nature of this existence. So with this, I would like to conclude this discussion on Sri Ramakrishna. Sri Ramakrishna's entire life points towards the reality of God. His life was an immersion, complete immersion in God. And this is what inspires us most, that a life lived in God, what is it like? He has brought God so near to us. He has brought God to our very homes, to our very hearts. He shows us how to relate with God, how to think of God, how to pray to God, and how to realize God. All of this is found in his words, and it is all born of his realization. So studying this mind, this itself is a huge sadhana in itself, the life of Sri Ramakrishna. With this, I would like to conclude my talk with a prayer. May he endow us with true knowledge and devotion by his infinite grace. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Peace, peace, peace.